Yeah. Can you just come up with that? Yeah. Simon, just check this way.
Yeah.
So we can see the slides. I'm Joe. And the it turns off, so.
Okay, I think we can make a start. Hello everybody, welcome to this side event organised by the International Coral Reef Society, and we're talking about positivity in the face of global coral bleaching. Firstly, I just wanted to say a few words about ICRS, a society, and also a little bit of information on the current fourth global bleaching event. So, ICRS was founded in 1980. It's the international scientific body for coral reef research and principal association to which coral reef scientists, managers and enthusiasts from the world belong. It's got over 1,000 members, and it's a broad spectrum of researchers, educators, managers, students, communicators and citizens from over 70 countries and territories. So the mission of ICRS is to promote the acquisition and dissemination of scientific knowledge to secure coral reefs and associated ecosystems for future generations. And in terms of the fourth global coral bleaching event that's currently happening, I got some latest information from Derek Manzillo at the NOAA Coral Reef Watch. So this is officially the biggest bleaching event on record. It's been running since the beginning of last year, and up to the 20th of October, 77.2% of the world reef areas has experienced bleaching level heat stress. So this has beaten the last global bleaching event so far by over 11%. And there's been confirmed reports of mass coral bleaching from 74 countries and territories, and this has been in most of the oceans, so northern and southern hemisphere of the Atlantic, Pacific and Indian Oceans. So for this side of it, so we've just got the introduction done. We have some high-level opening remarks. Then we'll do the individual presentations. We'll have a panel discussion and then a Q&A at the end. So we have a good, exciting range of speakers. We have Joseph Appiah from the CEVP Secretariat, David Brewer from IPBES and Audio East Africa, Monica Medina from Penn State University, Ali Abayad from KAUST, Jean Marie Robinson from Foundation Providence, and my name is Simon Harley, representing ICRS. So we'll go straight into the high-level opening remarks from Joseph Appiah.
So, I don't know if I would consider myself very high level, but I appreciate the compliment. I'll stand behind the podium as such. My name is Joe Appiah. I coordinate the work on marine, coastal, and island biodiversity here at the CBD Secretariat. So I'm very busy here at this COP, and actually I will have to unfortunately run right off because I have an event that our Executive Secretary is speaking in very soon. But it was really important for me to be here. This is a really, really important topic, and I wanted to thank Simon and ICRS for inviting me to speak. I also wanted to acknowledge that Simon himself is actually a really valuable collaborator of the CBD Secretariat. He's been behind actually a lot of the technical work we've done over the years, and not only on coral reefs, but on underwater noise, marine debris, on a lot of other topics. And I have not found somebody who can synthesize technical, scientific, and scientific information into policy advice as well as Simon can. So thank you very much for all your collaboration, Simon. But it's also really inspiring to see how the coral reef community has sort of mobilized for this COP. And really around the GBF overall. I mean, actually we've had a significant amount of robust input into the GBF, in particular from ICRI, and ICRI being really, really valuable partner for all of our parties, not only with the Secretariat, providing valuable advice. Of course, this is extremely timely. As Simon just noted, this is the largest coral bleaching event in history. And I think there's often been this misperception of coral reefs as this sort of niche conservation issue, something that is just some pretty colorful stuff under the sea that we only really care about for conservation purposes. But I think for many of you that live and work around coral reefs and especially with it, you know that that's not the case. They are exemplary. They're clear examples of things that really sit at the nexus: conservation, food security, sustainable development, climate change, all of these things. They're not just this niche issue that we shouldn't really, some say, oh, they're going to go anyway, we shouldn't waste our resources on it. That's certainly not the case, and it's certainly not the case for people in the communities that live around and depend on the services that coral reefs provide. We also know, of course, that corals are facing multiple pressures, and those are cumulative pressures in many cases from many different sources. So I think in many ways the coral issue is very emblematic of the GBF itself, which is extremely cross-cutting. It's more cross-cutting than any framework we've ever had before under the convention, and I think the coral community has mobilized really well around how to put the message and how to build the understanding of coral reefs, not only as essential and really something we have to worry about for protected areas or just for pollution, but across the framework. And I think many of you here, and ICRI and ICRS and David Ogura have been really instrumental in that. So I think there is a lot, of course there's a lot to be worried about as we know, but there has been a lot of development, a lot of interesting tools, innovative approaches, but a lot of looking back to some of the really true, the tried and true examples of things that we know from indigenous communities and indigenous peoples and local communities that have lived in harmony with coral reefs for many, many years. So I think this positivity aspect is something we need to really focus on, because often we spend a lot of time lamenting the situation we're in. So I myself am not a coral expert, so I don't have many of the solutions, but I just wanted to say from the side of the CBD Secretariat, and I think I can certainly speak for our parties, this is a major, major issue for the CBD. And although we might not see coral reefs in the framework, the word coral reefs, they're everywhere. And I think the work that a lot of our coral colleagues have done have made that message very clear. We just have to carry it through to on-the-ground implementation and to build the tools and better utilize the tools to support that understanding. So thank you again for inviting me, and I look forward to hearing the few presentations I can actually stay for. So apologies if I have to run out, but thanks again, Simon and ICRS.
Thanks very much. Okay, so we're going to move straight into the individual presentations, and first up is David Ogura, talking about coral reefs in the Anthropocene.
Thank you. Thank you, Simon, and good afternoon to everybody. I'll just click over here, thanks. So it's a pleasure to be here, talking about coral reefs in the Anthropocene. I have been very involved in coral reef work and coral bleaching from the first global bleaching event in '98 up until seasons to years. What's really happening with warming right now, so we can take urgent decisions and not wait 20 years. This graph on the top sort of says the same thing. These are new graphs that both the European Space Agency and NOAA are putting out now, showing all the grey lines are temperatures, I think since 1980. And you can see the orange and red are the temperatures over the last 2 years, 2023 and 2024, incredibly hot. They've jumped up in 1 year, they've jumped up a level of heat that corresponds to prior increases that took 10 years, or that took 25 years back. So, this is a really significant time to be in to really respond to coral reefs and understand what can we do for the ecosystem, but also for people dependent on them. I'll skip that one. The other thing I think that's really important is in our biodiversity community is really understanding, what can we really tangibly achieve? And let me skip to the next one over here. And these are a range of scenarios and curves of, so red is if biodiversity decline. This is a great study that came out in 2020 and just came from the side event where they're trying to update some of these scenarios now. Red is if we did absolutely nothing, no conservation actions at all, which is not where we're at. Gray is business as usual, which is not great. Yellow is if we did the HE targets in full. So this was done in 2020. So you could think of that as if we did the GBF, at least the biodiversity-oriented targets in full would be at yellow. But it's only if you do the green, that's with the full transformation of production and consumption sectors to circularity and sustainability, that we can get the curve of biodiversity back up above where it was in 2010 or 2020. Towards the end of the century, that's how long it takes. It's really important to be very honest with ourselves about how much work it takes to do this, rather than sort of just dreaming too much. So we need to understand how to do a nature conservation restoration much better, and there's so much investment in that. And we need that to happen. We need that research to happen, because it's not effective at scale yet, but it could be with luck. We need to transform economic drivers, direct and indirect drivers, and this is the IPBES framework sort of translated onto the sustainable development framework up here. But I think really gives us the tools to be very explicit about who needs to respond and where. And I'm not going to do this one, it's all about finance. Last one, I'll come back to this. So the last one on that graph that I had was doing the justice and equity. There's a lot of people in the world who have too little. The global impacts driving decline really come from high consumption, high income places, as opposed to the global population. And this is a big fallacy that's been out there for the last 50 years in talking about this. It's not the total global population that's critical in global signals of decline. Population is very important locally, of course, and overpopulation is very significant in many countries. But globally, it comes from excess consumption. So not only do we need to bring up sort of incomes and welfare, for low-income communities, that needs to be compensated for by bringing down the footprint of high-income consumers to make space for the impacts of low-income consumers, but also to release resources that they won't have access to. And so this comes back to a policy report that the ICRS produced in 2021. We identified 3 key actions that we felt were critically important at the global level. Invest in active restoration to enhance recovery. I think some of the later presentations will talk about that, so I won't talk about that so much. Reduce global climate change threats is, of course, critical to do. I think we all know that about coral reefs, but if we're not being explicit enough about who should do that, we're not getting the action, and we're not getting the action right now. And then to improve local conditions to build resilience of coral reefs is what we put down here. Put in brackets and social as well, because a lot of it is about the socio-ecological resilience and the resilience of communities who are dependent on reefs, some of which will transition into other ecosystems. It's inevitable. Some of them may be able to stay as coral reefs with all the action that we can do in terms of conservation and restoration, but not all of them will be. And these 2 actions over here are really about justice, about addressing underconsumption and low levels of resilience and adaptive capacity in many local places, and overconsumption that is driving climate change. We need to narrow the gap between the income gap and the inequality gaps that we have. So I think some of the messaging that I'm really pushing forward is at best now as well, is this issue of justice and equity in how we address nature. I'll stop with that.
Thanks very much. Okay, we're going to move straight on to the next presentation from Monica Medina, Pennsylvania State University.
Thank you, it's great to be here. So I'm going to tell you about something that is rather preliminary, but extremely exciting. because we are at a breakthrough moment with some of the technologies that we've been using in my lab. And you're some of the first people to hear, in fact, first people to hear it, I think. So I'll jump straight into the framework, I guess. So coral skeletons are like tree rings. You can, we've known these for a while. You can detect things like bleaching, cyclones, and freshwater anomalies. And the geochemists have been looking at this through different proxies. And when you use these geochemical proxies, stable isotopes and other things, you can reconstruct the paleoclimate. And some of the examples are things like skeletal luminescence and strontium-calcium ratios. So I'm going to give you an example of where our preliminary sample comes from. It's appropriate because we're in Colombia. This is a reef off the coast of Cartagena that several of us Colombians have been working at. It's at the mouth of the Bay of Cartagena right here. This is the island of Tierra Bomba, and it's impacted by the Magdalena River, which is the most important river in the country that was diverted by the Spaniards as a navigation channel, the Canal del Dique. And then in the 20th century, the Colombian government expanded it twice, in the 50s and the 80s. This is just showing that the Dique channel has existed since the 1700s. This is the city of Cartagena, and here is where the reef sits. The expansion of the channel killed all the reefs in the bay, and this is the last man standing. So this is an aerial view of what you see now. So basically the sewage of the nation floats over this reef. So you did not expect to find a reef, and Valeria, who's sitting here in the audience, was the champion of bringing awareness to the reef, and then invited me to come down here. And as we were doing different kinds of things, there was a group taking course. And as I went around the city and other places in the Caribbean, I kept seeing, and they were taking course of Orbicella fabulata. This is a coral of Orbicella. 50% of the buildings, colonial buildings in the Caribbean, or I'm making up this number, a huge percentage of these buildings are Orbicella. So I thought, you know, if we could look at the history of this, if these buildings could talk, we could understand a lot of the history and a lot of the ecological history. So I asked the group that was taking this course as we were doing other things, could I have one of those courses? So this is that one, and it dates back to the 1950s, and then I went back to Penn State, and Penn State has one of the best ancient DNA labs in the country, probably the world. They mostly study human epidemics from mummies and stuff like that, and they have people like me come in and lobbying, do you think we could try? And they tried many different things, and they told me 50 to 60% of the projects failed. So this is a little bit, I won't delve into this too much, but the idea is that we can capture holobiome biology using ancient DNA technologies to understand anthropogenic activity. So we have here the 50s, the dredging, initial dredging, the second dredging, and then we have the bleaching event. So we can use different proxies that tell us about the climate and about the history, and then we can pair that with the biology for the first time. And this is, sorry for the color here, but this is an example of something being transferred, but that's okay. The information to bleaching, but I'm tired of saying that, and these genes, the invitation was to bring some positivity. I am hopeful that this breakthrough will do that, because Dave knows more about this, but when you look at these models, predictive models, IPCC models of bleaching, what we are going to be able to do is also predict, because we will know what has happened in the Anthropocene and in the Indo-Pacific for centuries with this technology. We can nutrient eutrophication. There is a lot of things that have been worked out by the geochemists in terms of isotope proxies. So, and then another thing, and I think this is the most exciting thing, because we're so desperate, right? We're trying so many things, and I think we need to try everything, but I don't think we're going to CRISPR our way out of this crisis. Even though we now have CRISPR working in corals, there is 100 forward. So the predicted power, make more species, if we don't know the cryptid species, we need to work out CRISPR for 1,000 species, and then for each one of those genes, we don't have the time. So I think microbes is where it's at, and we have Ali, you're probably gonna talk about this, but we have our very own Colombian hero, Jordan, who just defended his PhD cum laude at the Universidad Jorge Tadeo Lozano. He's now working with Valeria. And he did a lot of research in probiotics. And I think this data that we'll be able to pair with this information are going to tell us DNA collaborators. And I think that's it. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right, we're going to move straight on to Ali for his presentation.
Okay, hi everyone. Happy to be here. My name is Ali Al-Abiad and I am a PhD student at KAUST of Marine Science. And one of my first memories is my uncle and I wanted to show this picture that is taken by my uncle because he is documenting the last few wooden boats that we still have in our coast. So this love and passion for the sea took me from the east of Saudi Arabia to the west, to the Red Sea. And the Red Sea is really a unique environment. Oceanographically speaking, it is an extreme environment. The temperature and salinity are higher, the average is higher than other world oceans, and also the nutrient level is lower than other world oceans. This uniqueness leads to a high level of endemism in the Red Sea. So a lot of species that are present in the Red Sea cannot be found anywhere else, so it's really worth protection. And this time in Saudi Arabia, it's a big shift, impactful shift, because we are opening our doors for ecotourism, and it comes with its disadvantages also. We have seen the degradation of many reefs in the world due to tourism. So I thought it's the right time for me to change my career. I started as a petroleum engineer, and I decided to go and work with coral reefs.
Bravo.
Thank you. So in the Red Sea Research Center at KAUST, we started a massive campaign for documenting and surveying all the corals in the central Red Sea, because the Red Sea is also under if you don't know what you have. So researchers, students, early career scientists, more competition than collaboration, but and it's sad to say that, but I love coral nubbins that I watched growing from small fragments to basketball-sized colonies, and all the transplants on the reef stars too. But we didn't lose hope. Three things happened to us that we didn't expect. We managed to save 200 coral nubbins that were on our offshore nursery. As soon as we saw signs of paling, we took them back to our inland nursery and we recovered them. The efficiency is good now. But also, one colleague left the university and he had a full tank of corals that nobody knew what to do with. So we inherited these corals. Another colleague was taking care of corals for 9 months and he finished his experiment and he donated his corals for us. So the next winter we will have a busy field season to restore the reefs and to change the dead corals to new alive corals. So as you can see, we have passion, we have energy, but what we need, what will help us is more visibility, more leadership training, mentorship, and I would like to take this chance to thank the Prince Albert Foundation in Monaco. They took me and 12 more environmental activists who work in the field of sustainability from all over the world, and they gave us training and they gave us...
The last speaker for this slot is June Marie Robertson from Foundation Protocols.
Thank you very much for this opportunity and to speak about something else. It's not about science and microbes and directly corals, but it's about decision-making processes. And I think the question is, how do we incorporate traditional knowledge to, I would say, to give back some hope. And I grew up also on a small island of the Central American coast, very close to the Mesoamerican reef. I was telling someone today that unfortunately we are considered Andean countries, so normally San Andres and Providence are really not in the loop of the Caribbean region. Many times when we go to the Caribbean, nobody knows about San Andres, Providence, and Santa Catalina. So I grew up on this island, and I saw things differently. And I think that's the reason why I still have hope that we can do something about the future. Because I lived, I experienced something different, and I think the idea is to see how we can recover some of this. So I'll just show you a little bit about the archipelago and about the seafloor MPA system, and finally about the management of an MPA. So this is the archipelago. As you can see, we are off Central America, and I said very closely related to the Mesoamerican reef. Just wanted to show you where we are. And this is the system of marine protected areas. I will not delve into this either, because it's about a case at The Hague with Nicaragua, so but I'm not going to that. That's not the topic of this presentation. So, as I mentioned, it's located in the southeastern Caribbean islands. It's between the southeastern Caribbean islands and Belize, and it's Colombia's only oceanic department, and we also speak Creole English. That's what I'm speaking now, a little bit of Creole English. We were declared a biosphere reserve in 2000 by the Manali Biosphere Program at UNESCO. And as you can see, although we are very small, tiny islands, San Andres is 26 square kilometers, we have more than 80,000 inhabitants, so that's a very densely populated island. And we also have a lot of tourism, so we are dealing with a lot of scarcities. So that's the seafloor marine protected area system. It was a process that took approximately 6 years. So the objectives were to conserve biodiversity and ensure sustainable use of coastal and marine resources, and to enhance equitable benefit distribution for the community. This was very important. We formed coalition with artisanal small-scale fisheries, fisherwomen and men, so that we could be able to develop this system of marine protected areas. So this is as it is in many of our Caribbean islands: coral reefs, mangroves, seagrass, and also, well, beaches and dry forests. And in the island of Providence, we also have a transition forest and human settlements. The social context: we have English-speaking islanders, their mother tongue, and then we have different other groups, such as Colombian that came from the continent since the Freeport in 1953, and we also have a large community that came from Lebanon and Syria and Israel, and we have from different countries. So the resource users, artisanal, industrial fishing, tourism, water sports, all of these, recreation, transport, as it is elsewhere. And then we always had this top-down management and a decentralized national, the framework that we have since 1993 has been instrumental to change this top-down management. So we were able, I began working at Coralina, that's the environmental agency, to have a better system, governance system, including different stakeholders. So these were the issues that we had to work with, and it's about ecosystem protection, which was very new. It could not be imposed. We had to exchange, have a lot of dialogues with these traditional resource uses, which included, as you can see, sand extraction, catching turtles and iguanas, also bird eggs, and people were really getting very worried about the amount of restrictions that would come with the marine protected areas. So we had our priorities was to protect traditional islander activities, but with these restrictions, which was contradictory, and we still are dealing with marine environmental degradation and lack of local benefits. The locals, they say that the benefits are for others and not for locals, and we have to deal with those type of complaints and those type of issues that make it much more difficult to be effective. So with decision-making issues, ineffective management, the area is huge. Fishing is everywhere, poaching, illegal fishing. And so the small-scale fishers, they say you have the capacity to control what we're doing, to enforce locally, but you're not enforcing in the other areas of the Caribbean, of the area, the region, so it's really unfair. Then we have issues about tenure and traditional rights, particularly fishing, food, security, access to collective fishing grounds, observance of traditional fishing rights. Right now, the fishers, when they go, normally they didn't ask for a permit to go to fish, and now they have to get a permit to go to fish. And that's very difficult for them to adjust to the different laws, and sometimes the enforcement officers, they do not speak English. So the question is, how can we integrate traditional knowledge into fisheries, which is one of our main issues with the locals. And in the past, what we did was we worked a lot with them to make maps when we were setting up the marine protected areas. We learned from them about their traditional uses, the gears they use, every information that was available. We worked a lot with aggregation, fish, different species, and they gave us the information in the past, where they were fishing, the type of fisheries, in what season did they catch different species, because that was something that they knew and they were willing to share it with us in the past. I am not sure if we will have the same opportunity now, because things have changed, it has shifted. They are dealing with overfishing, obviously, and so now we are beginning a new process to strengthen the marine protected areas, and they told us they are willing to work with us, but they are also putting their conditions because they want to see more benefits for the local communities, for the local fishers. They have industrial fishing that bring fishers from abroad, and they are competing because people that come from abroad, they use different fishing gears, not the ones that they are, the local ones that are like low scale fishing. So they use hookers to dive conch, for example, and they are really very upset holders. We need to hire locals. I was thinking after listening to some of the presentations today that probably we will need to set up a council of elders and especially fishers, but other locals, so that we can listen to them and make sure that we incorporate, that we include their knowledge. Promote stewardship, awareness, active collaboration in management for effectiveness and compliance. One of the things that have worked with other resources is to sign governance agreements, and the idea to be able to talk with them on the same level. So it's science combined with local knowledge and how we understand each other. And trying to overcome those collaboration barriers, communication that sometimes arise during these processes, because we go with the idea that we need to improve conservation and we forget that they are thinking about day to day. So we can look like in the future, but they say they need to eat every day. So that's more or less. So that's the idea, how we can have this mixture of conservation with the people, for the people, and achieve both objectives. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we are getting over time, so I thought we would just have a very quick panel discussion. So one response from each of the speakers, if they could come up and sit up here. So I asked the panelists to think of up to 3 reasons to be cheerful about coral reefs, building on what's already been said today. Examples of positivity from approaches or tools or initiatives that can maximise coral reef protection and resilience. So I think we just have one from each panellist, and then we'll go into a Q&A session for the end of the session. So let's go first.
I have a mic.
Okay.
No, I just speaking with the fishers on our islands, I think they really know there is a need to protect the corals and for conservation. And that's the reason why I think there is hope, because they see the need. But I think we, as the ones that can, as I said before, look into the future, we need to manage to find ways to agree upon some basics so that we can achieve the goals. They know that if we don't protect the corals, the fish will continue declining, and they are aware of that. So I think that's something they are aware of the situation. So I think that's positive.
Thank you.
Yes, I'll go next. So I think actually what I would say the one main positive thing, your presentation highlighted exactly what we're dealing with in all coral reef locations around the world, I think, and the fishing communities that we work with as well. Very different contexts and different backgrounds and so on. But the issues around people living in their environment and the challenges they face and the human side of those interactions that we have to address. And I think it came through really well in what you described. But we lose that in the very scientific and technical processes that we then take on in these sorts of spaces and talk about temperature rise or percentage loss of corals, and it becomes so technocratic that we lose sight of what it really is. One of the things that I've found in IPBES, talking about multiple values of nature and different ways of valuing nature, it's not just what we use and extract, but it's the relationships we have with nature and with one another, which is so important. If we can orient our decision making around that, then I think we're going to lose a lot. There's no doubt about that, but we can always deliver a better future than a worse future if we make the right, certain decisions every day. And so I think that part of it, the relational part, I think, is what I think is important.
I think it did.
I guess to build on that, speaking from a personal experience and also from being here and meeting so many great people, the energy at this COP is my first COP, but I feel, that there is still a lot of hope and enthusiasm and people really starting to think outside the box and moving away from their comfort zone. I have certainly done that here quite a lot, and it's paid off. The dividends will be for everyone, and I think that's really great. And to not extend myself, we had a session on mindfulness this morning that was really, really great, and ICRE gave us a space for that, to find ways to find hope and empathy with nature and with one another, and so that we can share our science better, and also to find new ways to communicate through art and through the communities and educating the youth and those communities, because I can't have an impact on governments, but I can have impact regionally and on my students, and that's where I've decided to invest my energy in, besides the science that I know how to do, because I've been doing it for a long time, but it stopped being rewarding, so I need to channel my energy in different ways, and I think I'm not alone, and that's, I think, for me, the biggest outcome, personally, to see that movement, that I'm not alone, and that we are all looking in different directions to find those like-minded spirits, not minds, that want to do something so that we collectively can do more.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I find hope through validation, and here I would like to acknowledge my advisor, Professor Raquel Peixoto, because she really uplifts everyone around her. And one of the things that a lot of people suffer from is imposter syndrome, and I guess especially students. And when I get contacted by the highest authority in Saudi on coral reefs and the sea turtles, and they are asking me for protocols and for SOPs and list of vendors and suppliers for upscaling the restoration projects that we did, it means that people really care, and not only people, the government really care. And I guess this is a place of privilege, and I'm really grateful and lucky that people are listening to what I have to say and think that is the right thing to do, and ask for my opinion on it and how did I do it. So I find hope through the validation of role models, but also through the high authorities.
Okay, thanks very much, Ali. We have a few minutes left. If anybody has a question or would like to have a point.
It's a question for Monica. So I was wondering, this technique you are trying now is just for resin reefs, or do you think it could be also tested in fossil outcrops?
I asked that just so the utility of the approach is, people have been able to sequence Neanderthals and mammoths, but those were fixed in permafrost, so they were frozen. So fossil samples, I think it's not gonna be, but millions of years, no, but tens, uplifted outcrop of not something too ancient, I believe so. Based on what they tell me in the quality of the bones that they have been able to process. And a lot of people are doing historical ecology through ancient DNA approaches, through more simple methods like amplicon-based methods, not metagenomics. So one of the articles that I recently discussed with my students was from Australia, where they did amplicon-based analysis, and they were able to see the changes in the community. I think it was in southwestern Australia, so they could see that it went like from a reef to a mangrove to a sandy beach back to based on the PCR methods that they use. So I think metagenomics has even more power than that, right? And in the case of corals themselves, I think that needs to be paired with sediment cores to be able to do these, in addition to the holobionts, the biology reconstructions. But we started with that in our grant, and they're like, no. So we took that out and just build in increments, but we've built a network now of people we've identified. So for instance, in, I think it's Vanuatu, Nukalu, one of the French colonies, there is a big guano location, so they know the isotope history of the place, and then we can use those isotope proxies to map that with hologenomics and see how that has been affected by eutrophication, natural eutrophication versus man-made eutrophication and that kind of stuff using cores. But I think that needs to be paired with sediment analysis as well. So I don't know if I answered your question. That's what I have right now.
Other questions?
So I've got a question because, one thing that I see back home in Seychelles is that quite often there seems to be a disconnect, and coral reefs are always considered individually, and you get these things like adaptation projects which look at stuff, and there seems to be this misalignment in the fact that, coral reefs are not only affected by coral bleaching, but rising sea temperatures, increasing velocity. So how do we bring adaptation models trying to, do coastal erosion and coral restoration? Why is the route forward bringing those two together? Because as we see sea level rise, we're losing hard structure for the corals. The corals are moving shallower, which are generally.
Okay, thanks. I think that question is one that I can try. So I think yes. So I think coral restoration projects now are going from sort of small scale, which have had to start with because it's so physical, to much larger scale trials and techniques that can be active over larger scales. So I think that movement will happen naturally over time, but it does take a research group or a group of people to think of that as an issue and be in the right place where they can test it and have the funding to test out some of those questions. And like in many island locations, like in the Seychelles, probably the resources are too small to really think that it might start happening in some areas. It might be, I mean, certainly in the Red Sea, there might be some quite large-scale restoration trials happening now that sort of blend both the restoration concept as well as coastal management concepts, which we're talking about.
Any more questions from the audience? Okay, well, if there's no more questions, I'll finish up this segment. Just to say that, there's really extensive challenges facing coral reefs over the coming decades, and here today we've heard a range of examples of approaches and initiatives that can provide hope for these reefs in the face of global bleaching and the stresses. I mean, we just can't give up on them. I find them it's the most amazing ecosystem. It's inspirational, and it's extremely important in terms of biodiversity, but also for millions of people around the world for food and livelihoods. So I think there is still a lot of hope, and we've got to keep going and keep doing what we want to do for reefs. So thank you very much for coming to this side event, and we'll finish it there. But there's no other event after this, so if you want to stay and keep talking, you're very welcome. Thank you.
Take a picture together.
Yes. We have props. And there's more. Ali, you know the drill one. Great to hear you talk to the International Coral Reef Initiative.